You know that moment when someone slides a piece of paper across a desk and your whole world just stops? When the numbers on that paper don't make sense because they can't possibly be real? That's exactly what happened when Patricia Stone from HR pushed that document toward me with her perfectly manicured nails. 58% pay cut, from $160,000 down to $75,000. I stared at those numbers, like they might rearrange themselves if I looked hard enough. I'm William Parker, Bill to everyone who matters. 48 years old, been in industrial systems for over 2 decades, and up until that Tuesday morning, I was Senior Director of Business Development at Apex Industrial Systems. 14 years I'd given that company. 14 years of building relationships, closing deals, and making them millions. I didn't react right away. Couldn't. Just sat there in that sterile conference room while Jason Reed, some 35-year-old MBA hotshot from Megadyne Corporation, explained how this was all about optimizing operational efficiency and right-sizing compensation structures. Corporate speak for screwing over the people who actually built the business. This reflects current market standards for your role, Jason said, straightening his expensive tie. He'd been sent from headquarters after Megadyne bought us 6 months earlier. One of those guys who thinks an MBA from Wharton makes him smarter than people with actual experience. The kind who uses phrases like synergistic value propositions in casual conversation. Patricia wouldn't look me in the eye. She'd been with Apex almost as long as I had, back when we were a scrappy company of 30 people in a converted warehouse. Back when Stephen Clark, our founder, knew everyone's name and actually cared about our families. Now she was just another corporate drone reading from a script, probably terrified of losing her own job. "We need your decision by Thursday," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If this arrangement doesn't work for you, we understand, but we'll need to begin the transition process immediately. Translation: take the pay cut or get out." I looked around that conference room with its generic corporate art and motivational posters about excellence and teamwork. Everything personal about Apex had been stripped away, replaced with Megadyne's sterile efficiency. The ping-pong table was gone. The Friday afternoon beers were history. Even the coffee had gotten worse. My client portfolio was worth $35 million annually. 6 major accounts that trusted me personally, not the company logo on my business card. Jennifer Collins at Steelworks Manufacturing had been with me for 6 years. When their main production line went down 2 summers ago, I spent 72 hours straight coordinating emergency parts delivery, not because my job description required it, but because their business mattered to me. Daniel Stone at Industrial Solutions Group was another long-term relationship. His company had grown from a $2 million account to $8 million under my management. We'd developed a custom maintenance program that saved them $400,000 annually. Daniel once told me he stayed with Apex because of me, not our products. These weren't just accounts on a spreadsheet. They were partnerships built through late nights, weekend emergencies, and actually giving a damn about solving their problems. But Jason Reed saw them as assets to be optimized and revenue streams to be managed more efficiently. "I'll need to review this carefully," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded despite the chaos in my head. "Can I have until Thursday afternoon?" Jason nodded, already checking his phone for his next meeting. Probably had 3 more of these conversations scheduled. Patricia slid a packet of paperwork across the table like she was handling contaminated material. Severance terms, benefit changes, new reporting structure. The whole thing was spelled out like they'd done this exact dance before. Walking back to my office, I felt like I was moving underwater. Everything seemed distant, muffled. 14 years of loyalty, of missing Sarah's soccer games for client emergencies, of building something real in an industry full of corporate sharks. And this is how it ends? Some kid with an MBA deciding I'm overpaid based on a spreadsheet he probably put together over a weekend? Sarah, my 16-year-old daughter who'd be starting her senior year in 2 weeks. College applications were coming up fast, and she had her heart set on Northwestern for their engineering program. The custody battle with her mother 3 years ago had cost me nearly $40,000 in legal fees, but I'd won because Sarah wanted to live with me, because I was stable, because I had a good job and could provide for her future. Now what? How do you tell your kid that daddy's company doesn't think he's worth what they paid him yesterday? I sat at my desk staring at my client contact list. These people had trusted me with millions of dollars in business decisions. They called me directly when problems arose, not some customer service number. Jennifer Collins had my personal cell phone and used it regularly. When her plant manager retired last year, she asked for my input on the replacement because she valued my industrial experience. That's when it hit me. They weren't just cutting my salary, they were dismantling everything I'd built, piece by piece. The relationships, the trust, the specialized knowledge of each client's unique needs. They thought they could replace 14 years of relationship building with some centralized account management system run by people who'd never set foot in a manufacturing plant. My phone buzzed with a text from Brian Foster. Heard about the Megadyne meetings today. Call me when you can talk privately. Brian had been my counterpart here until he jumped ship to Titan Technologies 8 months ago. Smart move, as it turned out. We'd stayed in touch, grabbed beers occasionally when our schedules allowed. He understood the industry, understood what Megadyne was doing to companies like Apex. I looked around my office one more time, at the photos with clients at plant dedications and contract signings, at the industry awards gathering dust on my bookshelf, at the coffee mug Sarah had given me last Father's Day with "World's Best Dad" printed in fading letters. Time to make that call. I walked to the parking garage before calling Brian back. No point having this conversation where Patricia or Jason might overhear. The concrete walls provided privacy and gave me a chance to think clearly. "Bill, thank God," Brian answered on the second ring. "I've been trying to reach you all week. Have you checked your LinkedIn messages?" I hadn't. Been too busy trying to keep my accounts happy while Megadyne slowly strangled the company with their process improvements and efficiency metrics. Every week brought new procedures, more approvals required for decisions I used to make instantly. "Why should I check LinkedIn?" I asked, though I was already pulling out my phone. "Christopher Hayes has been asking about you. You know who that is, right?" Christopher Hayes, CEO of Titan Technologies, Apex's biggest competitor and the company that had been trying to steal our clients for years. They'd made serious runs at Jennifer Collins' business twice, offering lower prices and faster delivery. Both times, she'd stayed with us because of our relationship. What's he asking? Everything. Your client retention numbers, your account growth rates, how long you've been with Apex. "Bill, I think they want to make you an offer." I leaned against my truck, processing this. "Brian, they just offered me a 58% pay cut. I'm not exactly in a position to be picky about opportunities." Silence on the other end. Then, "Those bastards." "Bill, you need to hear what Christopher is thinking. Can you meet tonight, away from both offices?" I thought about going home to Sarah, helping her with college application essays, pretending everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Where and when? Morton's Steakhouse downtown. 7:30. Christopher will be there, and he wants to talk business. After hanging up, I sat in my truck for a while, staring at the Apex building through my windshield. 14 years of my life were behind those windows. Late nights preparing proposals, early morning crisis calls, celebrations when we landed big contracts. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed since Megadyne took over. I pulled up LinkedIn on my phone and scrolled through my messages. 3 from Christopher Hayes over the past 2 weeks. Professional, curious about my future plans and whether I'd be open to exploring new opportunities. How had I missed these? Then I saw messages from 2 other competitors. Anderson Industrial asking about my availability. TechFlow Solutions wondering if I'd consider a strategic conversation. Word was getting out about Megadyne's restructuring. In our industry, news traveled fast, through a network of relationships built over decades. I drove home through rush hour traffic, my mind racing. Sarah would be at the coffee shop until 9 p.m., working her usual Tuesday shift. She'd started there 3 months ago, saving money for college expenses and gaining work experience. Smart kid, always thinking ahead. Our house still felt too big sometimes. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, nice yard. I'd bought it during the divorce proceedings to show the court I could provide stability for Sarah. The mortgage was manageable on my Apex salary, but on $75,000, the math didn't work. I spent an hour going through my original employment contract, the one from 14 years ago when Apex was still independent. Back then, Stephen Clark had been more focused on building a company culture than protecting against legal risks. No non-compete clause, no restrictions on client relationships after termination. Megadyne had implemented new contracts for recent hires loaded with non-competes and confidentiality agreements. But us legacy employees were still under the original terms. Stephen's oversight had become their vulnerability. I opened my laptop and reviewed my client files. Not the official CRM data that belonged to the company, but but my personal notes accumulated over years of relationship building. Who to call when permits got delayed, which plant managers preferred technical specs versus cost summaries, which executives were planning expansions or considering vendor changes. This knowledge wasn't confidential exactly, but it was valuable, very valuable. I'd earned it through thousands of phone calls, plant visits, and problem-solving sessions. It lived in my head, not in any company database. Jennifer Collins had mentioned last month that Steelworks was evaluating their vendor relationships as part of a company-wide cost reduction initiative. Daniel Stone's contract renewal was coming up in January, and he'd expressed concerns about Megadyne's service response times. Michael Brooks at Advanced Manufacturing had complained twice about our new automated support system, saying he missed talking to people who understood his business. These weren't just accounts to manage. They were relationships to nurture. And Megadyne's MBA efficiency experts didn't understand the difference. I closed my laptop and checked the time. 6:45 p.m. Morton's was a 20-minute drive downtown, longer in traffic. Time to get dressed for whatever Christopher Hayes had in mind. My best suit, the navy one I wore for major client presentations. Sarah always said it made me look official. I'd worn it the day I closed the biggest deal in Apex history, a $12 million contract with Jennifer's company that took 8 months of negotiations. I thought about calling Sarah at work just to hear her voice. But what would I say? That her dad's career was imploding? That college might suddenly become unaffordable? That 14 years of building something meaningful had been reduced to a spreadsheet calculation by some corporate efficiency expert? No, not yet. First, I needed to hear what Titan Technologies was offering. Then I could figure out how to explain everything to my daughter. I grabbed my keys and headed back to the truck. Time to find out what my 14 years of relationship building were actually worth on the open market. The drive downtown gave me time to think about what I wanted from this meeting. Not just a job, but validation. Proof that experience mattered, that relationships had value, that loyalty should flow both ways. Morton's parking lot was busy for a Tuesday night. Through the windows, I could see the usual mix of business dinners and deal-making conversations that happened in every decent steakhouse in America. Time to find out which category this meeting belonged to. Morton's was warm and inviting compared to the sterile conference rooms I'd been sitting in lately. Christopher Hayes was easy to spot at a corner table. Silver hair, confident posture, the kind of presence that suggested success without needing to advertise it. Brian waved me over with a slight smile that told me this meeting was going to be interesting. Bill Parker, Christopher stood and offered his hand. Firm grip, direct eye contact. I've heard a lot about you. From Brian, of course, and from just about every client we've tried and failed to win from Apex over the years. I sat down, ordered coffee, and got straight to business. Brian mentioned you've been asking about me. What's your interest? Christopher didn't waste time with small talk. Your client retention rate over the past 5 years is 96%. Industry average is 71%. Every major account you manage has expanded their business with Apex during your tenure, despite our best efforts to win them over. He pulled out a tablet, scrolled through some data. Jennifer Collins at Steelworks. We pitched them last year with a proposal 18% lower than your pricing. She didn't even negotiate with you, just renewed automatically. Daniel Stone's company doubled their contract value in 3 years. Michael Brooks at Advanced Manufacturing told our sales team, and I quote, "We don't buy industrial systems. We buy Bill Parker's expertise." I took a sip of coffee, processing this. You've done your homework. We've tried to recruit you 3 times over the past 4 years, Brian added. Each time loyalty won out. But Megadyne isn't the same company you joined, is it? No, I said. It's not. Christopher leaned forward. Bill, we've heard rumors about what's happening over there. Cost-cutting measures, salary reductions, plans to centralize account management. Is it as bad as we think? I thought about Patricia Stone's inability to meet my eyes, about Jason Reed's corporate buzzwords, about the 58% pay cut sitting in a folder on my desk. Worse. They just offered me $75,000 to keep doing a job that generates $35 million in annual revenue. Christopher and Brian exchanged a look. What's your current salary? Christopher asked. $160,000. Was anyway. Christopher slid a folder across the table. This is what we think you're worth. I opened it carefully. Inside was an offer letter on Titan Technologies letterhead. Chief Revenue Officer, $195,000 base salary, 30% annual bonus potential, signing bonus of $25,000, stock options, health benefits that would cover everything for Sarah, including the inhaler she needed for exercise-induced asthma. I stared at the numbers. It was $35,000 more than my current Apex salary, more than double what Megadyne was offering. Why? I asked. Why this much? Christopher didn't hesitate. Because we've lost $18 million in potential contracts to your company over the past 3 years, all accounts you personally managed. Because our market research tells us that when clients work with you, their average contract value increases by 140% over 3 years compared to industry standard of 23%. He paused, took a sip of his drink. Because I've personally had 4 different executives tell me they stay with Apex specifically because of Bill Parker. You're not just an account manager. You're a competitive advantage that Megadyne is too focused on spreadsheets to recognize. Brian jumped in with something that made my stomach drop. There's something else you should know. We heard through industry contacts that Megadyne is planning to consolidate all major account management under their national team within 18 months. They're using these pay cuts to push out expensive regional talent before the restructuring. How do you know that? Their new VP of operations came from Tech Global, Christopher said. He ran the exact same playbook there 2 years ago. Slash regional salaries, force departures, then centralize everything under lower-paid national account managers who've never visited a client site. So they weren't just cutting my pay. They were eliminating my position entirely and wanted me to train my replacement first. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. 14 years of loyalty, and they saw me as an expensive legacy cost to be managed out. I looked at both men across the table. If I do this, there's no going back. Bill, Christopher said quietly, they already decided you're disposable. What do you owe them? I thought about Jason Reed's smug explanation of market standards, about Patricia Stone's inability to defend people she'd worked with for over a decade, about Stephen Clark, who'd sold the company and disappeared to his ranch in Montana, leaving us all to deal with Megadyne's efficiency experts. When would you need an answer? I asked. Tomorrow would be ideal, Christopher said. We can move quickly when we want someone. And frankly, the longer you stay at Apex, the more damage Megadyne can do to your reputation with clients. I excused myself, walked outside into the cool evening air, and called Sarah. She answered on the second ring, sounding tired from her shift at the coffee shop. Hey Dad, how was your day? How was my day? I almost laughed. Eventful. Listen, kiddo, how would you feel about your old man taking a new job? Are you getting fired? Direct question. She was definitely my daughter. No, but I might be making a change. Better opportunity, better pay. Does it mean you'd be happier? You've been stressed about work for months. I can tell, even when you try to hide it. Smart kid. Smarter than her old man sometimes. Yeah, I think it would mean I'd be happier. Then do it, Dad. Life's too short to be miserable at work. Plus, Northwestern is expensive, and I know you worry about college costs even though you tell me not to. I stood there on the sidewalk outside Morton's, looking at the city lights, thinking about my daughter's wisdom. She was right. Life was too short to accept being undervalued. When I walked back into the restaurant, Christopher and Brian were waiting patiently. No pressure, no sales pitch, just 2 professionals who understood what loyalty should look like. I accept, I said, sitting back down. But I need 48 hours to handle my resignation properly. Christopher smiled and extended his hand. Welcome to Titan Technologies, Bill. This is going to be interesting. Wednesday morning, I walked into Apex Industrial with a different mindset entirely. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a competitor with inside knowledge and a 48-hour timeline. I had calls to make, relationships to protect, and a future to secure. My team was already at their desks when I arrived. Lisa Hayes, Jonathan Miller, and Amanda Reed, the survivors of what had been 8 people before Megadyne's optimization. They looked up when I passed, probably wondering if I'd taken the pay cut or if today was my last day. Their anxiety was visible. Everyone knew more cuts were coming. I started with my client calls, not to poach them, that would come naturally later, just to inform them about potential service disruptions and gauge their satisfaction with recent changes. Jennifer Collins at Steelworks was my first call. Bill, perfect timing. I was going to call you anyway. Our last 3 service requests have taken twice as long to resolve since that new system launched. What's going on over there? There have been some operational changes, Jennifer. I wanted to make sure you're aware that there might be more disruptions coming. I kept it professional, careful not to badmouth Apex directly. What kind of disruptions? I can't say much yet, but I'll be transitioning to a new role soon. I want to ensure continuity for your account during any changes. Long pause. Bill, you've been our account manager for 6 years. Our production efficiency has improved 32% since we started working with you. If you're leaving Apex, we need to discuss our options. Same conversation with Daniel Stone, same with Michael Brooks at Advanced Manufacturing. These weren't just business relationships built on price points and delivery schedules. They were partnerships founded on trust, problem-solving, and genuine understanding of their operations. Daniel was particularly direct. Bill, I've been in manufacturing for 23 years. Good account managers are rare. If you're making a move, I want to know where you're going. By lunch, I'd spoken with all 6 major accounts. The message was consistent. Their loyalty was to me, not to the Apex logo. Megadyne's efficiency experts had completely missed this fundamental truth about our industry. Lisa Hayes knocked on my office door around 2 p.m. Bill, can we talk? She looked nervous, kept glancing over her shoulder. What's on your mind? The 3 of us have been talking. We heard about the salary cuts, about what they offered you. We know you're probably leaving. She paused, gathering courage. Are there opportunities where you're going? Word traveled fast in dying companies. Why do you ask? Because we've all got families. Because this place isn't what it used to be. Because if they're treating you like this after 14 years, none of us are safe. I thought about Titan's expansion plans, about Christopher Hayes mentioning they'd need experienced people to handle new accounts. Send me your resumes tonight. No promises, but I might be able to make some introductions. Thursday morning came faster than I expected. I dressed in my best suit again, armor for the final confrontation. Sarah had left early for school, but not before making me promise to call her after my meeting. Whatever happens, Dad, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Smart kid. She understood more about workplace politics than most adults. The conference room setup was identical to Tuesday's meeting. Jason Reed, Patricia Stone, and Anthony Walsh from Megadyne Regional Headquarters. They expected a defeated man accepting their generous offer to keep his job at reduced pay. Instead, they got someone who'd spent 2 days discovering his actual market value. Bill, Jason said without standing up, have you made your decision about our offer? I have some questions first, I said, taking my seat across from them. Who's going to handle the Steelworks expansion project next month? Daniel Stone's contract renewal in January? Michael Brooks' equipment upgrade in March? Jason waved dismissively. We'll distribute those responsibilities appropriately through our national team. That's not something you need to worry about. Actually, I do worry about it. Jennifer Collins specifically requested my involvement in their Q2 planning. Daniel Stone's renewal depends on maintaining current service levels. These clients have expectations based on personal relationships. Those are company relationships, not personal ones, Jason's voice sharpened. The sooner everyone understands that, the better. I leaned forward. Is it true you're consolidating all major account management under the national team within 18 months? The color drained from Jason's face. Patricia suddenly found her paperwork fascinating. Anthony Walsh looked like he'd been caught stealing. Where did you hear that? Jason asked carefully. Industry sources. Is it true? Any future restructuring decisions are confidential company matters. So that's a yes. Were you planning to mention this before or after I accepted a 58% pay cut to train my replacement? The room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Jason's MBA confidence was cracking under direct questioning. Do you accept our offer or not? He finally managed. I stood up, straightened my tie, and smiled. I decline. I'm resigning effective immediately. Company policy requires 2 weeks' notice for director positions. Jason recovered his corporate composure. Check my original contract from 14 years ago. Notice equals severance. Since Apex never offered more than 1 week severance, that's my notice requirement. You'll need to transition your accounts. Actually, no. My contract waives transition requirements if compensation is reduced by more than 15%. Vernon Clark added that after the Paul Martinez situation. I headed for the door, then paused. I've accepted a position with Titan Technologies as Chief Revenue Officer. Since my contract has no non-compete clause, I start Monday. Jason went pale. Patricia looked ready to cry. Anthony Walsh was already reaching for his phone. "This is a mistake," Jason said quietly. "We'll be reviewing all your communications. Good luck with that. I haven't taken anything that doesn't belong to me. My relationships, though? The trust I built over 14 years? That's mine." Walking out felt like breaking free from underwater. My team was waiting by my desk along with half the office. News traveled fast. "Check your emails tonight," I told Lisa, Jonathan, and Amanda. "All of you." 6 months later, I was settled in my corner office at Titan Technologies, with a view of downtown and a team of 15 reporting to me. Jennifer Collins had moved Steelworks' business to us after their first service failure under Megadine's national team. Daniel Stone followed 2 months later. Then Michael Brooks. By year's end, Titan had acquired $22 million in new business from my former accounts. Not because I poached anyone, but because relationships matter. Trust matters. Experience beats spreadsheets. Jason Reed was pursuing other opportunities within 4 months. The regional office was quietly shuttered. Operations moved to headquarters just as Brian had predicted. Sarah got into Northwestern with partial academic scholarship. Between my Titan salary and stock options, we can afford the rest without stress. She's proud of her old man for choosing his worth over false loyalty. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at anyone. It's getting away and proving your value somewhere that appreciates it. Even if it takes just one phone call to change everything.